Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 24 of MAME Politics. I hope everybody out there is doing well today, considering how um, the facade of our democracy is being ripped off once again and revealing its true colors as what appears to be some kind of soft, fascist, ruling class dictatorship of some kind, with the facade of democracy and real participation sort of put over it as a artificial layer. Um, I'm gonna go check out the chat before we get started here. Um, oh, Adam G. I didn't actually see that yet. That 86% was already reporting. And from what I understand, the 74% reporting that they showed, all the graphics and the little like graphs that came out showed Pete Buttigieg in the lead, at a higher percentage than Bernie, even though Bernie actually, if you look at the vote counts, is getting more votes. So yeah, I mean, if it wasn't suspicious enough that they delayed the vote count this long, should be very apparent now that this was all about trying to sabotage Bernie. Um, I mean, it's so blatantly obvious that people are actually understandably getting upset at Bernie right now for not saying anything about it, for not talking about how rigged and fucked up what's going on is right now, which I can understand. That's one of Bernie's biggest weaknesses is his ability and willingness to go for the jugular sometimes when he needs to. And also, he's now sort of saddled by the accusations that he's Trump like. So if he comes out and says this is rigged, what the fuck is this shit? People will be like, oh man, that's such a Trump like thing to say, that you're talking about the process being rigged. Um, am I really too quiet? Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? I have my volume turned up almost at max. Anna Marie, could it be that your system volume is not loud enough? I have myself almost turned up to the maximum volume. So I'm sorry if you're not able to hear me, but if I turn it up any louder, I'm going to distort. And if I distort my OCD, I have an audio engineering background, and I cringe if I've released something online with a distorted audio feed. So I'd rather be too quiet than too loud, because once you get too loud, you digitally clip, and at that point, it's kind of unfixable. So, um, yeah, as long as I'm not clipping, I'm fine. I mean, I don't care how loud it is, but I'm just gonna make sure I'm not clipping at all. I don't want to clip. Sorry for ranting and going off on a tangent about audio quality. Um, Anne Marie, if you haven't already adjusted, try adjusting the YouTube volume itself on the screen. I mean, that's probably an obvious suggestion, but if your system volume is all the way up and you're still not hearing me very well, it could be that. Um, Also, I mean, I'm not using any compression, so that'll probably help in the future. I'll have to figure out a way to do that. Um, but yeah, so right now, I'm going to go check on the Iowa caucus results, the official last tally. So here's what the breakdown is now. This is updated at 2:39 p.m. So I guess these are the most recent results. The delegate count between Bernie and Pete is even, 11 and 11, matched. Joe Biden 0 delegates. But this is what I don't understand is the actual vote count seems very small compared to what I was seeing before. That it seemed like there's thousands of votes. So I don't know why on Google when I'm looking this up it says vote count Pete Buttigieg 512 to Bernie Sanders 488. Can anyone explain why we're seeing different vote counts when we look at different places? Tom Collector asks, "Do you think them pounding that Trump comparison to Bernie would work or backfire?" I mean, I think that it'll probably work a little bit, honestly. Um, I feel like it could have some effect. So if you didn't hear it already, me and I think one other Republican were the only two people to flip and vote for both of the articles. So, shocker, Trump is not getting impeached. I know that's a huge shocker for you guys. Is there some kind of like electoral style version of the votes versus the actual popular votes happening here? Is that what I'm missing? Tom Collector says yes. Okay. So this actual whatever this different vote breakdown is that's showing Pete Buttigieg getting more votes is actually the opposite, the inverse of the popular votes that we're seeing right now, which is very odd. I don't understand how that's breaking down that way. Is this are these like precincts that matter more or counties that matter more? Is that why he's got more of these votes? White Seed, thank you so much. It doesn't matter if it's a measly buck. Any dollar amount you subscribe to my Patreon for, I'm very thankful for. Even if you don't contribute, don't want to contribute, can't contribute, it doesn't matter to me. I'm so grateful of all the support that you guys have given me. Participating in the chat is good enough as far as I'm concerned. But of course, I would love more people to subscribe to my Patreon. I'm actually in the process right now of upgrading the Pandora's box to a newer system so I can play more games for you guys and can think of doing this, even for many years to come. So I won't run out of games. Could take requests from any of you guys in real time and play them pretty much on any system. So I'm moving in that direction. So even just for the show, the show's budget, which is slowly growing, it would help with that. So, hey, Black Fox, is that Lisa? I don't want to out you in the chat. Sorry, if that's you. Um, Omar Rana, yeah. In case you didn't see, we are playing Final Fight today, and I thought that would be a really appropriate choice because I woke up today with the feeling that this really could be the last real/fake election that we have here in the United States. Um, so this game's title is really apt for what I'm feeling today. That I have very little hope that there's any actual semblance of democracy left in this country. And if Trump gets a second term, I don't know what the country's going to be like after that. And I don't have much hope that even if Bernie wins the primary, that he's going to be able to beat Trump. I just have to admit that up front. I mean, I know maybe part of my job in doing these or talking to you guys is to try to give you hope to participate in the system and want to create positive change. But this is a really, really dark timeline. This is a really, really dark timeline. I already said this on several previous episodes, but what did we think was going to happen after the Supreme Court picked George W. Bush and then the neocons pretty much got their wet dream to come true for them within a year after that? What did we think was going to happen? Did we really think we'd be able to somehow turn things around fully and create some kind of framework to have a real participatory democracy after that? I just don't think we can let that go and put that, compartmentalize that in our mind. And I guess the older that I get and the more I involve myself in politics, the more that it's hard for me to compartmentalize that in my mind. And I'm now more seeing the world in the framework of how do we move forward? What do we do? Given that was the case, that on some level, the U.S. government probably did get away with somehow being involved in the 9/11 attacks, attacking our own country in order to create a draconian police state-like framework and a system for endless war and manufacturing consent for all that. What do we do after that? I mean, there's not even any hope anymore about getting a new investigation. And even if there was about 9/11, what would it matter now? Would it create enough of an awakening for people to protest in mass? I don't know. It's a hard pill for me to swallow, to think that we can just look away from all that stuff and only look towards a hopeful future. So, but at the same time, this election could be one of the last chances we have of actually changing the course of American history. Hansi, no, I'm not worried about that, because I think Bernie, his biggest weakness is acquiescing to these smears, to the elites that try to put him down. I think that's one of his biggest weaknesses. Is I don't think that if the smears got too strong, Bernie would be able to handle it. Meaning, I think that at some point he would capitulate. He might apologize. He doesn't have that Trump-like personality where he just refuses to apologize for anything. Tom Collector asks, is a non-Bernie Democrat necessarily better than Trump on issues like Iran, etc.? How can we be certain of that? We can't be. I mean, and I would say, generally speaking, they probably would be better, because I think they're coming off of the Obama administration's course in terms of how to deal with Iran. So I do think it would technically be better. In terms of foreign policy, we're in a really bad place in terms of what the Democrats want to do. They're very hawkish. They push a lot of neocon policies. So in terms of foreign policy, I think that in some areas the Democrats would be better. In other areas, maybe they would be worse. But I think that with a Democrat in office, we wouldn't be having this hysterical uptick in all this racism, the xenophobia, the sort of bootlicking, sycophantic behavior towards the federal government and ICE, and stuff like that. So I would be in a more relaxed place, even if someone like Elizabeth Warren was president right now, even though I very strongly dislike her. I would have to admit to that's I don't think I think the only good thing about Trump is that he's not consistent. And if he was more consistent and followed through more on the things that he talked about, we would be in a much more dark fascist timeline than we are right now. That's the only thing in a way that has saved us from that, I think. And the fact that there's so much factionalization in the ruling class and that there's a huge sort of, things have sort of shattered in DC in terms of the loyalties. So if things were more aligned, if there was more alignment, we would be in a darker timeline too. So Trump is creating a disalignment, and he's also inconsistent. Those are the two best things about him, by far, I think, that he exists in the presidency. Everything else about him is very, very scary, and even the way he talks about war. I mean, the way he talks out both sides of his mouth. He said in the State of the Union again that he wanted to end endless war. While bragging about murdering Soleimani and bringing Juan Guaido to the State of the Union. I mean, that's a scary thing to me. To weaken what being anti-war means while at the same time espousing neocon beliefs, mixing those two things together scares the shit out of me. It's a really potent, dangerous, toxic mixture that somehow has influenced a lot of people into thinking that it's okay to be a neocon and pretend you're anti-neocon at the same time. It's not okay with me. Obviously. Okay, says you can blame the Democrats. You can thank the Democratic Party for the new Cold War. I mean, I think that the neocons actually take most of the blame for the new Cold War. They just got a more hawkish wing of the Democratic Party to adopt it as means to gain leverage over the Obama administration in terms of him pulling back on neocon policy. And that's where it came from. So I don't think we can forget that. I don't think I don't think it's helpful to say that the Cold War 2.0 paradigm comes from Democrats, because it doesn't. If Trump didn't have any of these sort of Russia associations or alleged associations, the Republicans would be extremely hawkish on Russia too. It's actually odd that they've decided, because out of loyalty for Trump, to pull back on their hawkishness on Russia. That's a very odd thing to me, because there was bipartisan consensus on sending weapons to Ukraine. You just have to look at the roll call vote. Tons of Republicans were for that and are still for that. They want to also increase hostilities with Russia. See you later, Trish. Have a good evening. Yeah, John is right. He says the new cold hot war started after 9/11 when we did away with missile treaties. And there was a lot of other things we did too. I mean, the Bush administration decided to move a missile defense shield system into Poland, basically creating a mini version of the Cuban Missile Crisis with the new Russian government at the end of his term. And also, Bush officials David Frum and Richard Pearl directly accused Putin of being behind the Moscow apartment buildings bombings. So The Russian this is key, I think. The Russian government never directly accused anyone from the US government of being behind 9/11. They never did that. They never said that the United States government did anthrax. However, the US government officials, Richard Pearl and David Frum, neocons, Bush officials, both stated in a book that Putin was directly behind false flag terrorism in Moscow in order to create their own fake war on terror. This is really potent rhetoric. And I think that it implies that the neocons were really interested in starting a new Cold War with Russia very early on after 9/11. Yeah, Black Fox, the 1999 apartment building bombings was false flag. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it probably was. That's why I never um, go on. I never have ever said that the Russia's narrative of their war on terror is somehow valid. Like I was saying yesterday, anybody, any government that tries to spin their own version of the war on terror is trying to spin a bullshit format of endless war. Um, so I don't subscribe to any paradigms that talk about how heroic it is to kill terrorists. And I frankly think it's a very toxic point of view that has infiltrated a large swath of anti-imperialism. I am vehemently against regime change against Assad, but I am also vehemently against dumb reductive paradigms like saying Assad is a terrorist fighting hero. I think that's a really dumb thing to believe, and I'm just shocked sometimes when I hear leftists sounding like, you know, like they're in PNAC or something. It's like, what? When are we like? When did it become heroic to fight fake bogeyman? Like, fuck off with that bullshit. Fuck this dumb bullshit. I'm sick of it. I mean, it just makes me sick. Yeah, Oz whistles. Russia is keen to keep U.S. proxies off their soil. Sure, I'm absolutely sure they are. But when it came to their original war on terror, that really had very little to do with U.S. proxies. They just wanted to murder Muslims, just like the United States did. It can't be denied that Russia has that. There are basically neocons of Russia who want to obliterate Muslims. I mean, I know maybe that's a hard pill for people to swallow, but that's true. I mean, you know, and frankly, Russia started to adopt that mentality from Israel. So, it's one thing to heroically lift up Russia, but then when you start realizing they were inspired by Israel's war on terror to do what they were doing in the late 90s, it might be harder to think of them as heroically because it's like, oh shit, they were inspired just like the PNAC neocons kind of were about the war on terror. So, yeah, I mean, I think we need to get out of these reductive paradigms about that personally. Um, I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break. Um, I'll be right back. Okay, guys. I'll be back in like 45 seconds. I'm just reading some of your chat comments. Oh yeah, I mean the Democrats. If it wasn't for the Democrats and RussiaGate, I think Cold War 2.0 would be a lot weaker of a paradigm right now. I mean, of course, they deserve a large part of the blame. I'm just taking issue with the idea that they are the origin of it, or that it came from them, which is what the right-wing media wants you to believe. That's also what I'm trying to push back against. Is you read things like the Daily Caller, you read things like the Federalist, or these more quasi-intellectual right-wing outlets. You even read things like from Michael Tracy and Aaron Monte that sort of reductively play into that paradigm that this is all the Democrats who did this. And it bugs me because that was the whole thing of a very heavy agenda, is I saw where it was coming from, and it wasn't coming from the Democrats originally. They actually had very few like hardcore hawkish Democrats that were going against anti-Russia that they could use as surrogates during that time period. It kind of grew overnight after Trump got into office. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I could talk about this endlessly. Oz whistles. Putin is no lefty, but he sure as hell pulled that country together. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you mean by together. I mean, you should, if you haven't already, you should listen to the last Yasha Levine interview we did on Media Roots Radio, because there is a huge wealth disparity in Russia, and oligarchs sort of dominate the country, and Yasha was saying only 2 cities like seem even like wealthy at all. Like the rest of the country is like, it's very hard to get health benefits if you're like from a different city. There's a lot of things fucked up in Russia right now, economically, societally. Putin has pulled more people out of poverty than any Democrat. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't have much of a comment on that. I don't believe that on its face. Um, you know, I don't go after Putin or Russia, but I don't have any interest in sort of heroically lifting them up or looking at Russia or their government through rose-colored glasses. I don't look at any country's government through rose-colored glasses. Voltavin says, I live in Serbia some of the time. People really feel like Putin keeps them safe from the states, NATO. Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that. And in a way, he has actually taken a stand against that sort of encroaching system. So even if it's just symbolic what he's doing by taking a stand, it still means a lot to the Russian people. Propaganda. I didn't mean to accuse you of lifting them up. I don't think that you are. I just I'm just not. Yeah. Oz whistles. The Yasha Levine interview is not on YouTube. It is on SoundCloud. Or it's actually not just on SoundCloud. It's Media Roots Radio is available on most streaming platforms that do podcasts. So you can get it on iTunes. You can get it on pretty much any platform that does a podcast, where you can download podcasts. Adam G, put your Media Roots sticker on your car. Put it on your car. You should. I was trying to ask Yasha Levine yesterday if he thinks Michael Malice is a self-weaponized immigrant. Um, because Michael Malice, I guess, is he grew up in the Soviet Union, and now he's like this right wing sort of media pundit guy. Sing for us, Robbie. You guys obviously listened to the Nellie McKay interview on Media Roots Radio. What did you guys think of that interview, by the way? I liked how she was so humble about her own music and art that she turned most of those questions around back on me about my own music and art, which I found pretty amusing, and it's not something I'm used to doing in an interview. I'm glad that was one of your favorite episodes. I didn't know what you guys would think about it, honestly, because um I don't know. It was different. It was different than some of the other episodes that we've done. But I really really liked what she had to say. I like how it turned out. But yeah, for some reason I wasn't sure how you guys would respond to it. And also I'm glad to expose you to her and her music and stuff. And I'm definitely going to take her up. I'm going to take her comments seriously in the interview where she says she wants to do a show together with me. That would be incredible. That would be very interesting. I have no idea how our musical styles would match up, but I'm really keen on making that happen somehow. Tom Collector says, you should be vegan. I was disappointed because I didn't know you weren't. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, if you are serious about your comment, um, I yeah, I need to do a lot of things. I need to do a lot of things. I need to start exercising. I need to get physical activity. Nez C says, "Are you working on any new music? Loved the last episode." Yes, I am actually about to put three different tracks on three different compilations. Uh, totally different styles. One of them's an NES 8-bit style track, which I'm very excited about. I haven't made one of those in like maybe 20 years. And it kind of inspired me to think about doing maybe an entire album of NES, Nintendo 8-bit style music. That would actually make me really happy. So I'm just kind of, yeah, maybe some people think of me like I take my music too seriously or I do just weird abstract art, but I also am trying to lean more into just having more fun and not really caring as much about what kind of music I make and just having fun, like just doing it for fun. I mean, that's what it all should be about, right? I mean, I don't know. Um, Volta Vin, there's some Super Nintendo music online that I've done. One of them's a hidden track off of my album, The Masonic Assassination of William Morgan. And there's another track on that same album that's not a hidden track called Simon's Conquest that is done. It's an homage to the music from Castlevania 4, where I've ripped all of the sample libraries from actual Castlevania 4 running on an emulator. And if you dig Super Nintendo music, I think you'll dig that track. I tried to release a whole album of Mario World style music with my friend Steven, and that never materialized. But I wish we could get that going again because on all these Mario World game hacks, ROM hacks that I've played that have their own original music, it's like far less Mario sounding than what my friend and I actually put together on this EP like 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm kind of tempted to maybe resurrect that and try to do something with that. Because I didn't realize how much of a lack of Mario World style music there was out there, or convincing. Um, Persona management. I actually don't listen to house very much, and I don't listen to melodic trance except if you mean sometimes the occasional Goa or side trance. Um, I really really like some older, especially '90s, early 2000s Psy and Goa stuff. Um, Probably a lot of it was because of state dependent memory, meaning that I was high on psychedelic drugs when I listened to a lot of it. Um, but I will say, for anyone who's a synthesizer aficionado in this chat, find me any other music from the 1990s, electronic music, that was as proficient, complicated, and skilled with using sequenced analog synthesizers in the 1990s. I guarantee you, besides maybe some stuff on Fax Records, some chill out music by people like Pete Namlick or others, you will not be able to find any other electronic music from that era that has proficient use of analog synthesis to the level that Psytrance and Goa used it. Those producers were pushing analog synthesizer sequencing to a level that really actually hasn't been really topped since by anybody. I mean, it's pretty wild what kind of stuff they were doing. Persona management. SF still has a bunch of Psytrance raves. I'm actually not aware of them. I must not be plugged into the right networks because I don't I don't really hear of them very often. But I remember back in the day going to quite a few of them out here. People like Dr. Spook, other sort of old school Goa DJs. LFO is one of the only exceptions, Adam, but I would even argue that they weren't pushing analog synthesis as hard as some Goa musicians were, even like what's an artist I was thinking of the other day? Yeah, like go listen to the first Hallucinogen album, for example, if you just want to hear what I'm talking about. Industrial music, Bird Worldist, is the only other genre that comes to mind. Hip hop wasn't really pushing analog synthesis. They were pushing sampling. Hip hop actually pioneered sampling in the 1990s. Probably more than any other genre besides drum and bass and jungle. Industrial probably was the closest thing to Goa in terms of sophisticated, real-time hardware analog synthesizer sequencing. Bands like Skinny Puppy, especially. Bands like, God, what was that other band? How Job. Their album was very sophisticated when it came out. Well, one of the cool things about Throbbing Gristle is they were actually using 808 drum machines in their music before the 808 became like a pop music or electro music sort of staple. Volta Vin, peak sequencing. I mean, I think even though it's it's a largely widely hailed psytrance album, the first Hallucinogen album and the second one, Lone Deranger, are incredibly well put together in terms of analog synth sequencing. Um, I like the band Suicide for sure. Absolutely. Patrick Blair, I think the NTS sessions are awesome. It's one of the only places that I go online anymore to hear new, interesting electronic music or experimental music. The Autechre NTS sessions, or maybe that's what you're talking about. Because NTS is just called NTS Radio, so maybe you're talking about Autechre's record. I think it's amazing. Um, I don't listen to Snarky Puppy. I've never heard of it, actually. Never heard of Snarky Puppy. So, let's do this shit. So I picked Guy by default. So I have to admit that Final Fight holds a special place in my heart. That I still think on some level it is one of the most aesthetically pleasing, well put together beat 'em up games of all time. I mean, of all the clones that came out, even by Capcom themselves, there's something sort of special feeling about Final Fight. And I don't know if it's just the way that the character sprites are put together, the music, the aesthetics, the backgrounds. I'm not sure what it is. Or maybe it was just because it was one of the first beat 'em ups after Double Dragon that like really amped up the graphics and the sound and the presentation and even the gameplay style. What do you think? Oh yeah, Hagar, John. Hagar was the shit. He's kind of got like a body frame like you too. He's got like broad shoulders. He could probably kick people's asses in arm wrestling as well. Never lose an arm wrestling match. That's what John said here in the chat yesterday when I was playing arm wrestling. So I'm not using his special because when I use the special like that, it takes life off my life bar. So it's really only useful when you're getting like pummeled from all sides. This guy always looked to me like a really buffed out Stevie Wonder or something. This game has a lot of weird references too. Like someone mentioned earlier how they have like a guy that looks like he's just like a copy of Andre the Giant. It's true. And what they did is they actually, for some reason, Capcom, I guess, decided that Final Fight took place in the same universe as Street Fighter 2. So in Street Fighter Alpha, which is supposed to be a prequel to the Street Fighter 2 game series, they put a bunch of characters from Final Fight in the game, including Guy, which you see me playing as here. They also put in, I think they put in like 2 or 3 of the boss characters from Final Fight as well, like into the game Street Fighter Alpha. And one of you guys could probably correct me on exactly which characters from Final Fight ended up in Street Fighter Alpha. You motherfucker, fuck you. Damo, you son of a bitch. I'm playing Final Fight right now, partially symbolically because this election may be our last fight in this country. We have such a facade of democracy still remaining that, you know, it's surprising that people are even getting this invested in this election, but I understand it. I mean, I want Trump out of there. But yeah, Final Fight. This is the final fight. Now there's Andre. Son of a bitch. Yeah, the music in this game is fantastic. It's a nice FM synthesis mixture. Miss Poison is iconic. Says Sif Fantastic. Yeah. Someone actually made a mod of this game where you can play as Miss Poison, which I, for some reason, watched a video of last night in preparation for this stream. Her tits are like coming out of the underneath of her shirt too. It's like so scantily clad. Have we pretty much moved past that era in video games where it's okay to still show women characters like dressed like this? Or is it still pretty commonplace? I don't play many modern video games. Son of a bitch. Fuck. Gonna keep doing this cheapsies chow. I'll probably run out of time if I keep fighting people like this though. Probably not a good idea. We'll see. Son of a bitch. Ah! Why are there so many weapons in there for me? It's incredible. Is that sushi? Oh, shit. What's this guy wearing, too? He's wearing like a really weird jumpsuit. I don't get what style he's trying to be. Doesn't look like a punk rocker. He looks almost like some kind of nomadic motherfucker. Only 30 seconds. God, it's not even worth it to do that move at all. It takes off so much of your goddamn life. Crazy. All right. I'm meeting my boy Hagar now. This is for you, John. The life bar move. Jesus Christ. Oh, shit. You guys ever played the Final Fight sequels that were only for Super Nintendo? Final Fight 2 and 3? And they also made Mighty Final Fight for the NES, which was like a super deformed version. I think this guy Sodom was in Street Fighter Alpha as a playable character, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody could tell me if that's the case or not. So you can take his swords, I guess, okay. Alright. I remember the bosses being harder on the Super Nintendo version of Final Fight. Maybe I'm just having a false memory. Alright, so this is Street Fighter 2. Here we go. I remember being like irritated when Street Fighter Alpha came out. Oh shit, that's so good. Because I wanted them to just move to Street Fighter 3. I didn't understand why they were putting out like all these weird spin-off games and not just making a Street Fighter 3. And then by the time Street Fighter 3 came out, it like kind of came out with a whimper. Like no one seemed to care about it. It was weird. And I remember thinking Capcom kind of fucked up by doing that. And I never really understood. I just never understood the Street Fighter Alpha series. Never got into it. I liked Street Fighter 3 because it had all new characters. I mean, I was glad they finally made a real sequel to it. Yeah, Street Fighter EX. I mean, I kind of liked the way that they were the first game besides Mortal Kombat 4 to properly do collision, in my opinion, in a 3D environment. So I remember being surprised that they had pulled off like a smooth transition from the Street Fighter 2 style collision engine to 3D. But other than that, I didn't really care for it as a game. I did have it on PlayStation 1 though. I mean, I did play that Street Fighter EX quite a bit when it came out. I love how the sound his fist makes when it's being swung. It's like, son of a bitch. These palette swap guys too, they're like, they replace the head to make them different ethnicities. Like this guy on the last level was like a black guy. This fat guy head was replaced by like an Asian sprite. God, his jump kick is terrible compared to guys. So slow. What the fuck? I really like Hagar's pants animation though when he walks. Look how nice that is. Damn. It's a really good Capcom sprite animation for sure. What the fuck? X-Men vs. Street Fighter was one of the most magical arcade experiences, says Tom Collector. I think I had already... The magic for me had already mostly worn off and maxed out by the time that game came out for me, because I had already played a lot of X-Men Children of the Atom. That game was actually probably was one of the more popular fighting games when it came out. And that was the last time after Killer Instinct era that I can remember a 2D fighting game really sweeping the arcades and really like getting a lot of people lining up to play it. And for all those who don't know, X-Men Children of the Atom was sort of the fighting game engine style that Capcom would later use all the way through all their Marvel vs. Capcom games. The air combat style, the super combo style, that all comes from X-Men Children of the Atom, which had a spiritual sequel called Marvel Superheroes. That was back when Marvel used to own, like still have the licensing rights for most of their stuff all in one place. Now they can't do a game like that anymore. Like you will never see a game like that anymore that has all those characters unless... I mean, actually, maybe there is like some kind of Marvel game that has... Maybe Marvel vs. Capcom, the newest one, is kind of like that. But I feel like there's something still off about the licensing of which characters they can use in it. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Cody. Yeah. Did they ever make Hagar a playable character in any of the Street Fighter Alpha games? Because they should have if they didn't. I think at the end boss for this level is like a weird looking like rent-a-cop guy. It's a strange boss. Here he is. Eddie. Is he supposed to be an actual cop or rent-a-cop? I can't tell. He's got the chest hair poofing out of his thing. That's weird. Oh no, did the sound go off? What happened? Oh, he's shooting me. Deadly force during a fight. Crooked cop, motherfucker. Pig son of a bitch. Kill this bastard. Oh, what the fuck? Jesus, dude. He's just gonna shoot me now constantly? This is fucking cheap as hell. Oh my god. Oh, now he's dead. Okay. Well, wait. One more hit, I guess. Oh, shit. Are you kidding me? What the fuck? Just one more hit, dude. Come on. What the hell? Fuck. Absurd. Absolutely absurd. Yes, I played Afterburner, John. The original arcade machine where you could sit inside the sphere that would move around according to your movements was incredible. I always really get a kick out of that little scene in Terminator 2 when John Connor is playing the Afterburner arcade machine with the sit-down version. Before the T-1000 comes and finds him at the Galleria. Oh, that's Afterburner 2, says Tom. I really have a thing for those sprite-based 3D arcade games. And Rail Chase is a game that I really want to show you guys at some point because it uses a very similar engine to Afterburner, but it looks way better, I think, graphically. It's a much easier game than Afterburner, though, for sure. Afterburner is kind of on the difficult end, in my opinion, compared to some of those other sprite-based games they make. I don't like this. I don't like this fire floor. Bums me out. Is that the same fire animation from Street Fighter 2 when Dalsum hits you with fire? It looks like it. Looks very similar. This level was not in the Street Fighter 2 version. I mean, in the Super Nintendo version. I don't remember it. So not only did they remove Guy, they also removed some levels from the game as well. It looks like. Easy money. That scene where he hacks the ATM in Terminator 2 is hilarious. Doesn't he do it with like an Atari ST laptop or something? That scene was amazing. I just watched Aliens again last night by James Cameron. That movie ages pretty well. In terms of what you should do in Palo Alto besides yell at Condi Rice, I don't know. Palo Alto is kind of a weird town. It's a very rich town. It's very sleepy also. It's sort of like one of those really sleepy, wealthy towns. There's probably some good restaurants there, I would imagine. It's good, probably expensive food and cocktails in Palo Alto. Besides that, I honestly can't recommend anything about it. I'm trying to think of anything to do in Palo Alto. I mean, you really are in the heart of like Silicon Valley and like California's military-industrial complex. So if you want to do some weird shit and kind of check out that stuff, all that's down there. You can go to you can sneak on the Google campus, fuck around there. I'm sure security probably won't catch you. It's a gigantic campus. You can go check out Mark Zuckerberg's house. There's a lot of shit you can do like that. An interesting thing about the Silicon Valley, everyone always talks about, Mark Zuckerberg buying out the houses in his neighborhood and stuff. But what's interesting to me, and I'll say this again, is that Apple, I think, is actually one of the most evil companies in Silicon Valley that has managed to get most of the press heat on them to stand down. Look up the Cupertino police force and Apple. It's very fascinating because Apple was very smart like Facebook was. They didn't move to San Jose. Facebook didn't move to Palo Alto. Facebook moved to Menlo Park. Apple moved to Cupertino. This was a strategic action by both companies so that they could literally control the city government and the police force. I am not exaggerating. The Menlo Park police force has access to Facebook's back-end engine and can actually look at anybody's private profile. I kid you not. Somehow Facebook, the company, has given access to all of the Menlo Park PD, their back-end. Cupertino police, similarly, are basically beholden to anything Apple does. They control the city council. They control the city government. And something like over 40% of the population in Cupertino is employed by Apple. Like in terms of the families that live there, 40% of the families depend on an Apple salary. It's a pretty bizarre place. So I actually don't think Mike Judd, is his name Judge? Mike Judge? I think he's actually done a particularly poor job of showing actually how fucked up Silicon Valley really is and showing you the ins and outs of really how bad, creepy, and dystopian the place really is. I mean, he's kind of done a really good job of just sort of whitewashing it and honing in on the things that are just more quirky and silly about it. Somebody needs to just do a movie all about how bizarre and dystopian and how much of a police state Silicon Valley really is. I mean, see you later, John. I was thinking of playing Dig Dug, but since you're gonna leave, I will wait until a future episode of that because I want to actually have you participate and give me Dig Dug tips. So next time, John, I will play that game. And yeah, I think I'm going to sign off now for this episode of MAME Politics. A little bit of an abrupt ending. Sorry, guys. But I am off to... okay, you're here still. Okay, you're not leaving. Are you sure you don't have somewhere to go? I don't want to hold you up. I'm going to do a little Dig Dug because John had a game request today. I haven't played this game in 20 years or more. So let's give it a go. No problem, John. I mean, I don't think I've actually done a game we've requested so far, so I'm sorry it took me so long. 1982. Namco. Let's do this. Well, that sounded like the Mario 3 music. Dun 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 dun. Wait, why does this sound like Mario 3? And the music only plays when you dig? So what is the actual goal of the game? What do you have to do? Okay, so obviously I get killed by the rocks. Someone just tell me briefly what I'm supposed to do in this game. You have to kill all of them. How do I kill them? Do I have to drop the rocks on them? What the fuck do I do? I mean, obviously, okay, so I can't kill them by walking into them with my little digger. Drop rocks on them. Fuck. I don't understand. How do I drop rocks on them? Do I have to get them to follow me down underneath the rocks? This game is too hard for me. Okay, so there's an attack. Oh, I can kill them that way. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's kind of cool. You pump them up with air like a balloon. You know what? I don't think I've actually ever played this game. I thought that I had, but I really don't think I've ever played Dig Dug. It's cool. Okay. So I don't have to kill them with the rocks. That's just a second option. What a weird game. Interesting. Oh, shit. The controls are nice. They're very responsive and immediate. I don't feel like I'm being given any cheap predicaments here. Feels pretty fair. Oh, shit, but now this guy's gonna... Wait. Oh, no. No! Oh. That's weird that the music is, it's only plays when I'm digging. I like how you can just let the enemies follow you in, sort of camp out for them. It's kind of an interesting... That's not the typical type of gameplay on an old classic arcade game. Usually, you have to be on the move constantly. That's fun. It's challenging, but it's also easy enough to intuitively pick up, which are my favorite kind of games, where they present a fair challenge. What the hell? What the fuck? What happens here? Oh, weird. Okay. So they can escape. Oh no! Okay, cool. These controls are very responsive. Ah, fuck. Too slow. Trish, I understand why you're depressed about the caucuses. I mean, I think we all are in this chat to some degree. I mean, how could you not be depressed? I'm not saying that you should have expected it to be fucked up so you should be depressed. I mean, I am depressed too. And I wasn't, you know, I was getting my hopes up that Bernie was doing so well, so of course they can't sabotage him this much, you know, out in the wide open to this degree, but they have. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, it sucks. It really does. And I'm sorry to cut this off. I will play Dig Dug again some point in the future, but I only have about 15 minutes to prepare for the next episode of Media Roots Radio with Abby, where we are going to be talking about a lot of the stuff we talked about in here today and more. We're going to be talking about the caucuses, impeachment, a lot of different stuff. And expect that episode will probably come out sometime tomorrow or Friday. Usually takes us about 48 hours to get an episode out after we record it. Stay tuned for that. Also, if you'd like to get access to all the previous locked/hidden episodes of MAME Politics, you can watch, of course, all of the streams for free without becoming a Patreon subscriber of mine. But after they stream, I am locking and hiding certain episodes, sometimes arbitrarily, other times because I went off on too much of a rant, maybe said something I shouldn't have said about someone. But I'm not going to delete them online. I'm just going to give them access to you guys, my subscribers. So you can get access to all those hidden locked episodes if you donate to my Patreon at patreon.com/Robbie Martin. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me again for MAME Politics. And we'll likely do this again tomorrow. And we'll be announcing that on my Twitter, which you can follow at Fluorescent Grey. That's me on Twitter. So thanks again, guys. Take care.